glad and hopefully you're all healthy and glad that you're here this morning. We are continuing our discussion and our study in the book of Genesis. Glad to have our visitors with us. Glad that you're here, all of our members. And we have, there is a young adults class that meets down there in the basement, and the other classes are going on. So glad that you're here in this class this morning in our auditorium adult class, and ask you to turn in your Bibles to the book of Genesis. If you have any trouble finding that, Steve, then the book of Genesis, then that's the first book of the Bible. Okay. Yeah, I knew you. I knew you would be able to find it. Give you a couple of minutes to find that anyway. So the book of Genesis, and actually we're going into chapter 30. So we're moving along, and we'll see how much headway we make today. But there's some important but interesting things that we're looking at here in regard to Jacob and his life and his travels, but more than his travels, his situation. He is in the area of Haran, and I tell you what, Brett, go ahead and go with the map. Put the map up there. Now, I don't know if you can see all these points on this map, but I kind of had to make it larger so that you could see some of the points. And does anybody see Haran up there? It's way at the top, okay, on the other side of the Euphrates River. Okay, that's where Jacob is at the time being, okay, and he is from, and you may be able to see on the map, maybe, Bethel's a little hard to see, but you'll see it to the west of the Jordan River, between the Sea of Galilee and the Dead Sea. Okay, you kind of, most of you are familiar with the Bible a little bit, and you know where some of these places are. But over the next couple of chapters, the Jabbok River will figure in there, Bethel will figure in there, and also if you look south of the Dead Sea, you'll see Edom and Mount Seir. That's where Esau lives. Okay, so this is the kind of the world right now, the world of Genesis, but the kind of where Jacob is traveling back and forth. He's up in Haran right now as we are entering into Genesis chapter 30. Another name for where he is at is Padam Aram. Okay, so you kind of have those dual names going on for where Jacob is at. But most importantly, where he is in the land, the area where Laban lives. Laban is the brother of Rebekah, who you remember is Jacob's mother. Isaac, Rebekah, they gave birth to Esau being the firstborn, and then Jacob, the second-born son. And Jacob stole, deceived, bought, however you want to describe it, the birthright from his older brother Esau. And now he has the blessing of the birthright. And God has given his promises, and promises to be with him and to guide him and lead him wherever he goes and in his protection. But that doesn't mean that Jacob is to be understood, at least at this point, as a great man of faith. And he enters into contracts, shall we say agreements, with Laban, his uncle. And Laban is not the best individual in the world. And there's a lot of deception and manipulation going on Laban's part. You may recall in the previous chapter, in chapter 29, as we studied, that Jacob agreed with Laban to have Laban's younger daughter, Rachel, to be his wife. But Laban gave him Leah instead. And so he is now married to Leah. And he is upset. He complains to Laban, you promised to give me Rachel. Laban says, okay, I'll give you Rachel. You got to work for me 7 more years. Okay, he worked 7 years for Rachel, but he got Leah, and now he has to work 7 more years, or he agrees to do so, to have Leah to be his wife as well. Now, at the end of chapter 29, you have Leah is not the favorite, okay? I mean, just kind of keep that in mind. And this shows up throughout this study. Leah is not Jacob's favorite by any means. And even when Jacob later on feels that he and his entourage is under threat, under attack threat of attack by Esau, he puts Rachel and her children at the back, okay? And then there's Leah and her maid servant, Zilpah. And then, well, he puts Zilpah and all the others in the front. So Leah is not exactly in the greatest place of protection should there be an attack, okay? Rachel is in the more favored position. So I'm just saying that all of this shows itself here and there. God, however, at the end of chapter 29, looks with great favor upon Leah, and she bears 4 sons to Jacob. And so 4 sons, Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah. You'll note that she has Levi and Judah, and those 2 men and their progeny will figure in greatly, really, throughout the rest of the Old Testament, and Judah in particular, that tribe will figure greatly into the New Testament, in that Jesus will come from the tribe of Judah. Now, one of the things that is to be noted here is that while Leah is bearing 4 sons to Jacob, and it closes out with she stopped bearing, but she will bear more children for Jacob a little bit later on. But all the while, Rachel is not able to bear any children, okay? And this puts the 2 sisters at odds with one another. One of the things that is really very disappointing in this whole situation, and it raises a lot of questions, at least in my mind, and maybe to yours as well, is God is looking at everything that's going on, and he's allowing it to unfold, okay? And he doesn't put a stop on some of the behavior that is going on. He doesn't, knock Jacob in the head with a rock and say, Jacob, you need to pay more attention to me, okay? You need to pray to me. You need to seek my counsel and my advice and my input. But Jacob, that's one of the things, and I've said this before, Jacob is not spending a lot of time seeking the Lord's guidance in prayer. Not like Isaac. Not one time are we told that Jacob is praying for Rachel, that she will have children. There's kind of a mix, especially on the part of Rachel and Leah and Zilpah and Bilhah, their maidservants. It's kind of a mix of faith in God, but also, maybe a mix of paganism going on as well. Whatever's going on in their culture, and we get a little bit of that from the text itself, but whatever's going on, the culture plays a huge role in their thinking and in their emotions and in their actions as well. But we enter into chapter 30 with Rachel and Leah struggling against each other about bearing children, having children. And so we're beginning in verse 1 of chapter 30. Now when Rachel saw that she bore Jacob no children, Rachel envied her sister and said to Jacob, give me children, or else I die. And that kind of emphasis, that focus on the part of Rachel and on Leah's part is just cultural forces on them, that they live and they exist to bear children and to rear children. And Jacob's anger was aroused against Rachel. Rachel is his favorite. And he said, am I in the place of God who has withheld from you the fruit of the womb? So she said, here is my maid Bilhah, go into her, and she will bear a child on my knees, that I also may have children by her. Then she gave him Bilhah, her maid, as wife, and Jacob went into her. And Bilhah conceived and bore Jacob a son. Then Rachel said, God has judged my case, and he has also heard my voice and given me a son. Therefore she called his name Dan. And Rachel's maid Bilhah conceived again and bore Jacob a second son. Then Rachel said, with great wrestlings I have wrestled with my sister, and indeed I have prevailed. So she called his name Naphtali. When Leah saw that she had stopped bearing, as per what Moses told us in verse 35 of chapter 29, she took Zilpah, her maid, and gave her to Jacob as wife. And Leah's maid Zilpah bore Jacob a son. Then Leah said, a troop comes. So she called his name Gad, which means troop. And Leah's maid Zilpah bore Jacob a second son. Then Leah said, I am happy, for the daughters will call me blessed. So she called his name Asher. Okay, so you have all of this going on. Notice what's going on with Jacob. There's no prayer here. There's no consulting with God. God, what do you want me to do? Rachel's pushing me in this direction, and Leah's pushing me in this direction, and it's either he gives up and surrenders to the will of Rachel and Leah, which obviously some of that is going on here. But one thing he doesn't do, two things he doesn't do. He doesn't pray to God and seek God's guidance in prayer, which all of this calls for that. All of this is, if you're going to pray about anything, you're going to pray about your family relationships. And he knows that this struggle is going on between Leah and Rachel, okay? He knows this is going on. And then the maid servants are given to him, and so he bears children with them. Another thing that's going on here, besides him not consulting with God, is that you'll notice there's no leadership here at all on Jacob's part, okay? He's not saying to anybody, whoa, wait a minute. We shouldn't be doing this. We should just let God decide all of this for us. Apparently, he is giving us children through Leah, and if we pray and seek God's guidance and trust in him, then he will give us children through Rachel as well. Okay, but there's none of that going on. And in fact, how many times, notice here, in this whole story, really, how many times is Jacob even speaking? I mean, he says one thing here, okay, in verse 2. Am I in the place of God who has withheld from you the fruit of the womb? Now, theologically, that's true. That's true. Jacob is certainly not in the place of God, but he is devoid of prayerful responsibility, and he doesn't say very much at all. But who is doing the talking? Well, Leah and Rachel are doing most of the talking here, and that's going to continue here. Okay, Jacob needs to step up and say, I'm going to follow God's direction. He promised to bless me. He promised to give me a progeny like the sand of the seashore. Okay, so I'm just going to put all of this in God's hands. That's what his grandfather Abraham should have done, okay, instead of following the advice of his wife Sarah, okay? He should have just said, I'm just going to leave all of this in God's hands, okay? But he didn't, so him and Sarah came up with another plan, and that didn't work out. That didn't work out very well at all. Bill? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. 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 True. True. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, good, 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 good. Let's go on and look at, there's other things here, but in all of this, I'm focused, maybe wrongly so, but I don't think so, or that Rachel or Jacob is not much of a spiritual leader, and he's not solving this problem between Rachel and Leah, and then the other two women. By the way, the other two women, they're just servants, and nothing about their personality is described here for us at all, and they don't say anything. So now Reuben went in the days of wheat harvest. So this is an interesting portion here, verses 14 through 24. Now Reuben went in the days of wheat harvest and found mandrakes in the field and brought them to his mother Leah, which is a fruit. Then Rachel said to Leah, "Please give me some of your son's mandrakes." But she said to her, "Is it a small matter that you have taken away my husband? Would you take away my son's mandrakes also?" And Rachel said, "Therefore, he will lie with you tonight for your son's mandrakes." So there's a deal, there's an agreement that comes to pass between Rachel and Leah regarding who's going to lie with Jacob. See, where's Jacob in all this? Well, I mean, where is he in all this? And Rachel has the power of choosing who is spending that night with Jacob or not. Okay, so a deal is made between the two sisters. When Jacob came out of the field in the evening, Leah went out to him and said, "You must come in to me, for I have surely hired you with my son's mandrakes." And he will lay with her that night. And he lay with her that night. And God listened to Leah, and she conceived and bore Jacob a fifth son. And Leah said, "God has given me my wages because I have given my maid to my husband." So she called his name Issachar. Then Leah conceived again and bore Jacob a sixth son. And Leah said, "God has endowed me with a good endowment. Now my husband will dwell with me because I have borne him six sons." See, all of this, Leah is what's on her mind is she wants to take Rachel's place. She wants to be the one who is truly loved and favored by Jacob. She called his name Zebulun. Afterward, she bore a daughter and called her name Dinah. Dinah will figure in later on, but otherwise she really has very little role here. Then God remembered Rachel, and God listened to her and opened her womb. Okay, so Rachel. Okay, here's Rachel. And she conceived and bore a son and said, "God has taken away my reproach." So she called his name Joseph and said, "The Lord shall add to me another son." Okay, so here's this tug of war going on, okay, but a deal is brokered between the two sisters, all with the idea, at least Rachel has this idea, not necessarily Leah, but who knows, but Rachel has this idea that if she takes this, I don't know, this medicine that derives from this fruit, the mandrakes, then this will cause her to bear children to Jacob. Bill? Yeah. Well, that's right, and that's a little bit of an open question because in my mind, Jacob, Jacob, does Jacob believe in God? Of course he does. And when I say I'm not just talking about God's existence, but he depends on God, and not here, but he has this interaction going on with God. How much he is he is sharing all of that with his wives. Um, I don't know. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes. 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 That's right. And it says a couple of times when both Leah and Rachel are bearing children. It says, what God is thinking and what God is doing, and He's allowing this to happen. And it says a couple of times that He heard them. He heard them. So Rachel and Leah, to some degree, are appealing to God. Okay. Now, this reminds me, not to go into a big point of application here, though, but this reminds us this is very much like people today, okay? They have a little bit of faith in God, and they appeal to God here and there, especially when it's important, especially when life comes down on them very heavy. But often, though, in normal life, there is very much the superstition that is going on and kind of a mix of this. This is very much what happens to people today. Uh, yeah, yeah. And that's a great reminder, Bill, that providence of God is in all of this. And whether we kind of scratch our heads and say, well, because what I scratch my head about is a little bit later on, God is going to warn Laban not to engage in misbehavior here in regard to Jacob. Okay, and so God wants Laban to stop here. Now, the question could be asked, why does God get involved here and there, but He doesn't get involved everywhere else? Okay, why doesn't He tapping Jacob on the shoulder and say, look, I don't like what's going on here, Jacob. You need to straighten up, and you need to do what is right and be the leader that you're supposed to be. But um, why God doesn't? Why God acts this way and why He doesn't act this way? I don't know. God is sovereign but overall, as you said, Bill, God is involved in this, and these sons are coming into the world, and this is going to all develop into the nation of Israel. Yeah. So the nation of Israel came about, obviously, not in the very best of circumstances. Okay. Because we're seeing all of that unfold right here before our very eyes. The mandrakes, this is what do you call? This is just either paganism or superstition that this drug has some kind of or this fruit has some kind of power to enable all of this to happen. But it is God. It is stated again and again. It is God who is listening. It is God who is involved. It is God who is allowing these women to have these children. Sure. Yeah. 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 But here and there, God does present himself, and basically he impresses them and says, you know, you need to pay attention to this. You need to pay attention to what I'm doing. You need to pay attention to the promises that I'm making, and why he does that at some points, and he doesn't do it at others. I'm not sure. God will do what he wishes. Yeah, Steve. Yeah. Yeah, and whether it had any real ability to make one more fertile or not, that's an open question. And the reason, just because when we see these women bearing these children to Jacob, there is no credit at all given to the mandrakes. And oh, this is what caused this. Okay, the mandrakes. But at least the women are turning, at least Leah and Rachel. Nothing is said by the two maidservants, but Leah and Rachel at least are saying that God is the one who gave me this son. God is the one who did this. So anyway, verse 25, and it came to pass when Rachel had borne Joseph that Jacob said to Laban, send me away that I may go to my own place and to my country. Give me my wives and my children for whom I have served you, and let me go, for you know my service which I have done for you. And Laban said to him, please stay if I have found favor in your eyes, for I have learned by experience that the Lord has blessed me for your sake. So there's there's Laban using this God talk as well. God has blessed me for your sake. Then he said, name me your wages and I will give it. Now, at this point, do you really want to be making financial deals with Laban? Because Laban has proven that he's not trustworthy. Well, things are actually going to get worse as far as Laban is concerned. Name me your wages, verse 28, and I will give you. So Jacob said to him, you know I have served you, and how your livestock has been with me. For what you had before I came was little, and it is now increased to a great amount. The Lord has blessed you since my coming, and now when shall I also provide for my own house? So he said, what shall I give you? And Jacob said, you shall not give me anything, for if you will do this thing for me, I will again feed and keep your flocks. Okay, so now Jacob is entering into an agreement with Laban, and Laban's not to be trusted. Okay, as we will see, he's not to be trusted again. So Jacob says, you give me this, I will again feed and keep your flocks. Let me pass. Here's Jacob's condition. Let me pass through all your flock today, removing from there all the speckled and spotted sheep, and all the brown ones among the lambs, and the spotted and speckled among the goats, and these shall be my wages. So my righteousness will answer for me in time to come. All right, you'll see that I'm righteous and I'm good, and you should deal kindly with me. That's the meaning of that. When the subject of my wages comes before you, every one that is not speckled and spotted among the goats and brown among the lambs will be considered stolen if it is with me. And Laban said, oh, that it were according to your word. I mean, you can see Laban is excited. Oh, this sounds like a great deal. I've got this covered. I mean, it's just going to get better and better for me, and it's going to get worse and worse for Jacob. Okay, some father-in-law, right? I mean, that's who he is. Now look at what happens. Okay, look at what happens. So he, and the he there is Laban. So he removed that day the male goats that were speckled and spotted, all the female goats that were speckled and spotted, every one that had some white in it, and all the brown ones among the lambs, and gave them into the hand of his sons. Now, that's not what he was supposed to do. That's not what he agreed to do. He agreed to take all the speckled and the spotted and the brown and all those out from his flock and give them to Jacob. Okay, that's what he was supposed to do, but he doesn't do that. Okay, he gives them to his sons. Okay, basically, Jacob is starting with pretty much nothing. Okay, he's going to start with pretty much nothing. Okay, I mean that's where we are. And then he, I'm assuming that's Laban, he put 3 days' journey between himself and Jacob fed the rest of Laban's flocks. Okay, so that as he was feeding the flocks, then when one was born with speckled or brown or spotted or whatever, then according to the agreement, then he would take those off away from Laban's flocks. Now, this is going to go on for about 6 years. Okay, this is all going to go on about 6 years. So far, you're in the next chapter, what we're going to see is that God is the one who directed Jacob to do this, to ask for these goats and these lambs. Okay? Now, the rest of what Jacob does in the branches and putting them in the gutters and all that stuff, there's no indication that God told him to do any of that. Okay? This is what Jacob comes up with on his own, beginning in verse 37. Yeah, what's that? That's our resident wasp, okay, that buzzes around here, okay? So just kind of watch out, okay? All right. So verse 37, now Jacob took for himself rods of green poplar and of the almond and chestnut trees, peeled white strips in them, and you can see him doing that, okay, with his knife and peeling those strips in the branches, and exposed the white which was in the rods. And the rods which he had peeled, he set before the flocks in the gutters, in the watering troughs where the flocks came to drink, so that they should conceive when they came to drink. All right? Yeah, you see, this works every time, right? This works every time. All right? The problem is it doesn't work. There's no scientific support behind doing this. So the flocks conceived before the rods, and the flocks brought forth streaked, speckled, and spotted. Now the reason why they're bringing forth these animals is because God's doing this, okay? Not because, Jacob came up with a novel breeding technique, okay? That's not what is happening, but God had already promised. God had said, this is what I'm going to do for you. Then Jacob separated the lambs and made the flocks face toward the streaked and all the brown in the flock of Laban. But he put his own flocks by themselves and did not put them with Laban's flock. And it came to pass, whenever the stronger livestock conceived, that Jacob placed the rods before the eyes of the livestock in the gutters, that they might conceive among the rods. But when the flocks were feeble, he did not put them in, so the feebler were Laban's and the stronger Jacob's. Okay. Now, when it says they're feeble, it doesn't mean they can't stand up or anything like that. The feeble ones, and it could involve that, I suppose, but the feeble ones are the ones who are breeding, but there's no production that's coming about. Okay, that's what's really going on here. And the stronger, those that multiply, those come with Jacob's. Thus the man became exceedingly prosperous and had large flocks, female and male servants, and camels and donkeys. Okay, so all the while, so Jacob is prospering and all of his livestock is just growing and growing. Laban's getting smaller, smaller, and smaller, okay? And not because he hasn't latched on to Jacob's breeding techniques, okay? But it's because God is with Jacob. God's blessing him, all right? So that's what's going on here, and really verse 43. That's really the climax of chapter 30. And when we go into chapter 31 a little bit, and just the time that we have remaining here, go into chapter 31, where Jacob is going to. He's had enough. It's been 6 years. By the way, if you're going to use these breeding techniques, it usually takes generation after generation to bring this about. No, it's God blessing him through this 6-year period, and his flocks are growing and multiplying. Now Jacob heard the words of Laban's sons saying, so the sons are watching what all's going on here. Jacob has taken away all that was our father's, and from what was our father's he has acquired all this wealth. Okay, so they think that Jacob is cheating them somehow, and we got to do something about this and put this stop to this. And Jacob saw the countenance of Laban, and indeed it was not favorable toward him as before. Okay, as you can imagine, Laban's not favorable towards Jacob. By the way, don't you remember over in Genesis chapter 26 that the Philistines were not very favorable to Isaac either, because he was prospering also, because God had been with him. Then the Lord said to Jacob, return to the land of your fathers and to your family, and I will be with you. So, Jacob, I've got something new I want you to do. I'm ready for you to leave. I'm ready for you to get out from under Laban and his watchful eye, and all that he is doing is manipulation, and I'm ready for you to go back to the land of your fathers. Time to go. And the Lord says, I'm going to bless you. I'm going to take care of you. Right? Yeah, Dennis? Yeah. Yes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. We would definitely. And you'll notice that when you make comparisons, and it's easy for us to do this, um, because we know the new covenant, and we make comparisons between that, and we're not what we in yet with what we call the old covenant, but certainly the patriarchal covenants and things. And when you make these comparisons, God has order. He has order, and people get out of that. They start behaving and speaking and doing things that, and God has to make adjustments, or God chooses to make adjustments to that to bring people back. The flood is one of God's great works of adjustment, okay? We're gonna start over, okay? And then he leaves it back to human beings again to kind of make their own plans, and God is still guiding the process, even in the midst of bad choices and irresponsibility and bad behavior on the part of people. But God is still working, and but when we come to the new covenant, don't you feel like, don't you get the feeling that in the new covenant, that definitely that order is there, and God raises, shall I say, raises the bar in terms of what he expects of us? Okay, yeah, I think so. I think we can definitely make that statement in regard to marriage and sexuality and all of that. God is definitely in the new covenant raising the bar of his expectation for us. Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Uh, that is so true. Hmm. Yeah, yeah. Very good. Yeah, very good. I really like what Dennis was saying there too, and what everybody's saying about, yeah, this. I mean, you see, Dennis, you see all this disorder in this relationship, family relationship, especially. Jacob is against Laban. Laban's against Jacob. Rachel and Leah are against each other. Jacob is kind of caught in between that and being pulled every which way. And thankfully, we are going to see Jacob coming out of that, thankfully, and taking more responsibility and more leadership, uh, the kind of leadership that he should have. But in some ways, a lot of that is forced on him by God himself. God appearing to him, giving visions, revelations, saying, all right, I want you to do this, like he's doing right now. He's saying, all right, time for you to leave. And Jacob really, does he have a choice in that? Maybe he wants to stay or something. Maybe his wives, they're not, but the wives are going to say, no, I don't want to leave. I want to stay right here. I want to stay right here. This is what I know. This is my home and all that stuff. And they could have tried to pull him away, and maybe Jacob would have said, oh, okay, I'll give in to that. But he doesn't, and they don't try to do that. But he really needs to direct himself in the direction where God wants him to be, and thankfully he does that. He does that beginning in chapter 31. Yeah. So, yeah. 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 Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for being in our class this morning, and we'll break there and get ready for a time of worship.